second memorial for Ananda Chakrabarty. He was my husband's uncle, and we lovingly called him Chota Kaku. There was so much of an outpouring of love for Kaku that we decided that we needed to have a memorial part 2. My greatest memory of Chota Kaku is with Ubita and Sharoni, our daughters. When he saw them, his eyes would light up and he'd say, "Hi, Natni." He would ask about their goals in life and give sage advice. I know they learned so much from him. We were blessed to have him in our life. So today I have the honor of introducing Krishna Chakrabarty, or my Kakima, Chota Kaku's wife of over 50 years. Then Shopna Banerjee will speak, Chota Kaku's sister-in-law. Next, Kaveri Chakrabarty, Chota Kaku's daughter, will say a few words. And finally, you will hear from Ashok Chakrabarty, or Nilu, from Kolkata, who is Chota Kaku's nephew and childhood friend.
Hello, I am Krishna. I am the wife of Ananda Chakrabarty. In Bengali, we say Chakrabarty, but actually in English, we pronounce it just Chakrabarty. So I had the same name before I was married, but my name didn't change, but a lot changed in my life after I married him. So in 1958, we were classmates together in Kolkata, Calcutta University. We were students in the MSc class. MSc stands for Master of Science in Biochemistry. So that's when I met him. I can't really say that I knew him well during that time, but I did notice that he had a very fun-loving streak. He would make jokes, make fun of his classmates, and he remained fun-loving all his life. I know that he passed away on July 10th, and it's hard to believe, but he was making jokes even when he died. He said in Bengali, he said, "COVID amake dhoreche," which means COVID has caught me. He didn't have COVID, but he thought that he had. So life with him has been a great ride for me. I keep remembering him. Most people think of him as a person who was always smiling. His name was Ananda, which in Bengali, also in Sanskrit, means happiness, and people remember him with his smiling face. He used to tell jokes, although we knew the punchline because he would repeat it many times. So now he's gone up to heaven, and he has a new audience where he can repeat his jokes and they won't know the punchline. So all I can say is, although we were good friends, marriage was not our idea. His professor, Dr. Shailesh Rai, arranged our marriage. He and my father were friends. He suggested the match, and we did not object, and none of us regret it. He did say during our wedding ceremony, which was in 1965, the groom is supposed to say, "I will provide for you," meaning for the bride. And he laughed and said, "She'll provide for me." In fact, he did provide for us, and we did have a great life. Not to say that he was always smiling. He went through some bad times. We went through some bad times, especially when our son died. But he was always jolly. He tried his best to take care of sad situations. In the meantime, he also accomplished a lot of scientific research, one of them being awarded the first patent for a living bacterium. So we miss him. I miss him, daughter Kaveri, nephew Devu, and all the family members, all the friends We miss him, and I think that you are pretty happy wherever you are.
Namaskar. I'm Shapna Banerjee from Cleveland, Ohio. Ananda Chakrabarty was my brother-in-law. I used to call him Jamai Babu, which in our language means brother-in-law, husband of an older sister. He was married to my elder sister, Krishna. Jamai Babu was a well-known scientist, but today I want to talk about him as a person. I knew him almost my entire life, and he was like an elder brother to me. Jamai Babu was my sister's classmate in their MSc at Calcutta University, and I first met him when I was about 10 years old, when he came to our house when my sister invited her classmates. And I remember thinking at that time that he was so handsome, because he was quite good looking at that time. But he was also very friendly, very witty, and very popular. By the time they got married, I was a teenager. After their wedding, they were there only for about 3 months. But during that time, I saw him almost every day. He always, my brother and I used to visit them all the time. He always seemed happy to see us. He would take us to fancy restaurants. My parents loved him. My father, who had quite a stern personality, would even laugh at all his jokes. After they came over to this country for their postdoctoral studies, they settled here, and about 9 years after that, I also came to this country to be with my husband in Cleveland. When I got off the customs enclosure at the JFK, Jamai Babu was the first person I saw. He was there to receive me along with my husband, and I had the first glimpse of this country from his Impala, which, by the way, he drove way above the speed limit. He drove us to Albany, Cleveland, where he was working as a scientist for GE at that time. And by that time, my brother was also in this country at Northwestern University. And their home in Albany and later on in Chicago was a center for our family gatherings for nearly over 40 years. I used to visit them quite often, and every time I went there, no matter how late we were, he was always there to open the door with a smile to welcome us. He would always stay up for us. And he visited us in Cleveland many times for each of my family events, and he made friends with all our guests. Jamai Babu was someone who loved to be surrounded by friends. When my sister went somewhere, he would immediately call up his friends and ask them to come over and have dinner with him, or better yet, he would drive over to their homes and force them to feed him. Jamai Babu was maybe because it was of his nature, or because he came from a very large, loving family, he loved being with people. He was also a very generous person. He loved to buy things for his friends. Every time he went to India, he donated to countless schools, charities. He willingly helped family members. He would throw big parties in fancy restaurants for family unions. Every time he went to India, he would bring back an expensive sari for me. I have quite a few of them in my closet. But he didn't like anyone to give him a gift. He would wear quite old clothes for years at a time, very simple, inexpensive ones. He lived a very simple life. But if you went to a restaurant with him, there was no way he would let you pay for it. He didn't like credit cards, but he always had his checkbook with him. Jamai Babu appreciated good food. He definitely had a sweet tooth, but he also had an iron control. He would take one little cookie or a piece of sweet, cut it up into 2 or 3 pieces, and then eat them over several days. And he never had snacks in between his meals. But he was very particular about his tea. He had to have Darjeeling tea, 𝐓𝐫𝐢𝐻𝐿 brand, and he would prepare it meticulously several times a day. He always, he traveled extensively, and he always complained about the tea that he got at different hotels. So one time I just grabbed my 6-year-old's plastic lunchbox, a red one with cartoon characters on it, and I put a small ceramic mug into it. I bought a tiny immersion heater which fitted inside that mug, and in 3 small plastic containers I put 𝐓𝐫𝐢𝐻 tea, dried milk and sugar, and I included a spoon and a napkin, and I gave it to him, and he loved that gift. He took it with him everywhere, and he thanked me so many times for that. Towards the end, Jamai Babu's memory started failing him. He was still very friendly and jovial with his friends, and no one could guess that he couldn't remember their names. But it frustrated him a lot, and it was very hard for us to watch this brilliant mind lose its luster so rapidly. Fortunately, he didn't suffer much physically, but at the end, I think death came as a blessing. And with his passing away, the scientific community lost a very important contributor, and we all lost someone who was genuinely good, kind, and someone who was truly humble.
My name is 𝐓𝐫𝐢𝐻𝐿 Chakrabarty. I'm the daughter of Ananda Chakrabarty. And when I was young, we would make little jokes in my family about my father because he had trouble keeping straight the details of his family. When people would ask him, how many kids do you have? How old are they? What are they doing? He was not able to answer those questions. And he traveled a lot for work. He was very successful at his work. That was really important to him. So he didn't spend a lot of time with us, and he was a little bit distant from us. And when I was young, I was disappointed by that. But the older I got, the more accustomed I got to that idea. I knew that he was working and that he was doing well. And another thing that we used to joke about my dad is that he was not very good at languages. My mother is, and I am, but my father was not. So he spoke Bengali because that's his native language, but he couldn't really speak any other Indian languages. And we had a little bit of a joke that one of the few things that he could say was he could say a Hindi phrase, "Phir milenge," which means I'll see you again soon. So when we were leaving somewhere, he would always say to people, "Phir milenge," as if he spoke Hindi, which he didn't. And then in 2017, he went to India and he got sick there. He was in the hospital for quite some time. And when he came back, his personality had changed a little bit. So he was a little bit more emotional. And when he would see me, he would sometimes say to me, I wish we saw more of you. I miss seeing you. That sort of thing, which was unusual for him. So now he's gone. He's at peace. And so now I will simply say, I miss you, Dad. Phir milenge. We'll see each other again soon. Bye.
Nilu and Ananda Chakrabarty is my uncle, Choto Mama. We are of the same age and we have been good friends all our lives. Almost every year we had the opportunity to meet him either in our house or any restaurant wherein invited his close friends and Scythia relatives. When he would leave Chicago to attend different conferences, he used to send me picture postcards. He stayed in his nice bungalow in Chicago, surrounded by nice garden full of flowers. About 4 years ago, he shifted to a multi-storied building, mostly inhabited by Indians. Where he was in Kolkata, he used to stay at Ramakrishna Mission. Now no phone call will come. Hey Nilu.
Hi, my name is Obita Chakrabarty.
And I'm Sharmi Chakrabarty.
And Ananda Chakrabarty was our Dadu, which in Bengali means grandfather.
We are going to introduce a few of Dadu's friends who will be speaking today,
First is Manatosh Banerjee, who is a long-term family friend.
followed by two of his college friends, Shubrata Basu and Hiran Punia.
After them, Shumit Chanda, who worked with Dadu for 2 summers and is the son of Rita and Shubir Chanda, will speak.
Finally, Mahua Chaudhary, daughter of Dadu's friends Molai and Kona, will speak.
Hello, I'm Manatosh Banerjee. I'm very pleased to participate in this remembering of a very special person. Thank you, Krishna Di, to allow me the opportunity to participate in this manner. Dr. Ananda Mohan Chakrabarty came to my view as a genius scientist who had discovered a bacteria which was able to eat up petroleum, an achievement equal to a Nobel Prize. However, not only did he do this, but he became expert in intellectual property rights while fighting a lawsuit himself. And in that lawsuit, he became an expert and was able to go around all over the world teaching the jurists and the judges about these property rights. One of his articles he wrote on the subject I was asked to summarize for one of our Bengali Association magazines. This giant was also involved in all the BAGC activity and met amiably all of us and greeted us, and we all enjoyed him thoroughly. He was involved in Unmesh activities every month, which is a self-written literary club, Cine Bibi, a film club monthly, and Short Story Bengali Club and Natuk Charcha Drama Appreciation Club. All places he was involved, and he was very animated when he was asked to read certain excerpts from that by Krishnadi and Bashanti. He also was reading these on phone to a friend of ours who was losing her vision so that she can participate in these events. What happened to my giant? He turned into multiple persons whom we are going to celebrate today and heal our loss. Thank you.
Hello everyone. Well, it's a part of memorial services for the late Dr. Ananda Mohan Chakrabarty, Distinguished Professor, University of Illinois, Chicago, our dear Ananda. My name is Subrata K. Basu. First met him at St. Xavier's College Hostel, Megbagan, Kolkata, way back in October 1958. His easygoing nature had removed the barriers of seniority and being in different streams of studies. After he relocated to the US, he made it a point to meet up with his old friends, including few boarders of the hostel, whenever he had visited Kolkata. Time being short, I will mention only one incident among many. As I was pleasantly surprised one lazy afternoon to receive an invitation from the organizers of a lecture presentation by Dr. Ananda Mohan Chakrabarty at Bangalore on 16th December 2006. No wonder it was at his instance. Who would have imagined that when we met in Calcutta on 30th January 2020 would be the last one. A relationship or friendship for 62 years came to an end. We miss you, Ananda, Thank you and namaskar.
I am Hiran Bhunia. In 1958, that is 62 years ago, I came to Calcutta to get myself admitted in graduate classes of St. Xavier's College. After completing the formalities of admission, I walked down to 𝐓𝐫𝐫𝐢𝐛𝐮 in Park Circus area to meet one Mr. Ball. He was then the superintendent of St. Xavier's College Hindu hostel, quite separate and distinct from princely Christian hostel within the college compound. At the entrance door of the hostel, I bumped against a smiling, lanky young man, not older than myself, and inquired where I could find Mr. Ball. He replied in a voice not commonly found among young boys, rather normal and common among young girls. That was my first encounter with Dr. Ananda Mohan Chakrabarty, our Anandada, as we used to call him, because he was 2 years senior to us in classes. I spent 6 years of my formative life with Anandada. Those days were full of fun and gaiety. He used to keep in touch with us by coming to Calcutta every winter, and we few remaining boarders would invariably gather together at a lakeside club for lunch and talk about days gone past. The last time we had this gathering was in January 2020. I believe all good things must come to an end. Thank you.
My name is Sumit Chanda. I'm grateful for the opportunity to pay tribute to Dr. Chakrabarty. I called him Ananda Kaku, which in Bengali means uncle. He was a family friend and a mentor. In college, when I started exploring my interest in science, he graciously allowed me to do 2 summer internships in his lab in Chicago, and it really changed my career. I'm now a professor of immunity and infectious diseases in San Diego, California. We recently had a paper which we were able to acknowledge Ananda Kaku's Mentorship, really a project that reminiscent of a project I did in the lab where when I was there in the summer, he was asked me to look for small molecule drugs that would inhibit Pseudomonas aeruginosa. It's one of his favorite bacteria. We used a similar strategy recently to look for known drugs that can inhibit SARS-CoV-2 replication. So really goes to show you the mark that he left on me and the science and a generation of scientists that can be traced back to both working with him and being mentored by him. So I wanted to thank him and Krishnamashi, which is Bengali for auntie, for their support, not only of my professional career, but also in life. Ananda Kaku will miss you, and thank you.
Hi, my name is Mahua Chaudhary, and I am the daughter of Dr. Malay and Kona Chaudhary. My parents have been friends with Ananda Kaku since Urbana Champagne days. My dad returned back to India, and Ananda Kaku had kept in touch with him throughout. He was like a family member to us. He would visit us every year when he would go to India. And I have so many fond memories growing up, seeing him visit us. He was featured in our school textbook, and I was so proud that I knew him. Actually, I took an autograph of him too when he visited me when I was in school. Then over the years, I continued studying in India and then finally moved over to the US for my master's. I got engaged to my husband here, and my parents unfortunately could not make the engagement party. And Ananda Kaku and Krishnamashi flew from Chicago to California to represent them. It was really very appreciated, as I felt at home that they could be with me during an important time in my life. They have always kept in touch with us like a family, and he actually even visited us last year. My son calls him the Wiki Dadu because he has a wiki page. Ananda Kaku, we really miss you. I wish we could have spent some more time with you. Thank you for all that you did for me and my family. It's very appreciated. Thank you.
Hello everyone, I'm Debu Chakrabarty. I'm a professor of cancer biology at Northwestern University and a nephew of Al. My uncle influenced my academic and professional life without him trying to influence. I became interested in studying biochemistry and become a scientist because since my childhood, I saw him how happy and excited he was being a scientist. I wanted to be like him. As college kids in Kolkata, India, my brother and I would sneak in the seminar room of biochemistry department of Calcutta University to listen to his talk. I didn't understand back then the whole content of his talk, but seeing the crowd size, I was like, wow. My uncle is a rock star scientist. Would it not be fun to follow his footsteps? As both of us being cancer researchers, we will discuss results, grants, and papers. I always wanted to publish a research paper with him, but unfortunately that did not happen. Instead, I ended up collaborating with him on a science fiction book and writing his obituary in a science journal named Nature Biotechnology, linking us together professionally and personally. With his passing, I lost an uncle, an advisor, a science role model, and a well-wisher. My family and I miss him every day. As my tribute, I put together a photo slideshow reflecting on his childhood, college days, marriage, children, academic training, tremendous professional accomplishments, and global recognition. But you'll also see him having fun with family, friends, and colleagues. Let's take a look. Let's meet the Chakrabarty family. Ananda or Al married Krishna, his classmate, and it is claimed that they were not romantically involved, but his PhD mentor actually arranged for this wedding. So when you get a PhD under a great mentor, you get a thesis, doctorate, and a wife too. But together they made a beautiful couple, and they have two beautiful children, 𝐓𝐫𝐢𝐻𝐿 and 𝐂𝐡𝐚𝐬𝐷. Al was born in a small town named Sandhya in the Birbhum district in the state of West Bengal in India in 1938. He was youngest of 7 children. His mother was a homemaker and his father was a local merchant. Al excelled in his studies from his childhood days. He was extremely strong in science and Sanskrit, although I was told by him that he hated math. He went to Sandhya High School for his 10th grade education. Then he moved to Bolur Vidya Mandir for his 11th and 12th grade studies. Then he studied at St. Xavier's College, majoring in chemistry, and then he got his master's degree in biochemistry and then his PhD from the same department in Calcutta University. Al got his PhD with Professor Shailesh Roy, and I think that really paved his life as a scientist and as a professional. The paper that Al published with Shailesh Roy was so influential that a giant in biochemistry, Gunny Gonzalez at UIUC, wanted Al to come and join his lab as a postdoc, and that's what Al did, and he did actually extremely well as a postdoctoral fellow. Because of that work, he got recruited as a scientist at General Electric, where he did the majority of the work on genetic engineering that subsequently made him world famous. After leaving General Electric, he joined as a distinguished university professor at UIC, where he stayed until his death in 2020. Al really enjoyed his work. He spent days and nights and weekends in the laboratories, and the work that he did at GE led to the US Supreme Court giving the first patent on living organism, and that made him world famous, although the scientific reason for the work is also as strong, and I think that also established him as a great scientist. Because of the Supreme Court verdict in his favor, it was covered by top newspapers around the world, including New York Times, Daily News. His patent and work was covered by popular magazines such as Time Magazine, People Magazine. Because of the influence of his work, he collaborated with the judiciary for almost 40 years or so. He just spoke recently on the 40th anniversary celebration of Diamond versus Chakrabarty Supreme Court case at the Smithsonian Institute in Washington, D.C. Via Zoom. And he also traveled with judges in different countries multiple times. After finishing his work on microbiology, he became interested in cancer. And for whatever he touches, I think somehow it makes it to the newspapers. So his work on cancer was really phenomenal, using bacterial protein to treat cancer. That also got significant coverage in press in India, in the US, and worldwide. But he always wanted to bring it to the bedside. So this is what's called bench to bedside. So in the process, then Al became the entrepreneur and a humanitarian. He started 2 companies, Amrita Therapeutics and CDG Therapeutics, that are running actually clinical trials to use bacterial protein to treat cancer. In addition to doing his own research, he also brought his science to the community by publishing science fiction books, as well as writing reviews with his friends and colleagues. He even influenced next generation of scientists. Some students, they actually did their thesis on the Supreme Court verdict of Diamond v. Chakrabarty. And some people created blogs to commemorate him. He was included in the list of some of the most successful scientists that you can think of Indian origin. And somebody actually made a crossword puzzle to memorialize him too. So, because of his work and contribution to the government of India's science policy, he received Padma Shri from President Abdul Kalam in 2009. This is the fourth highest civilian award from the government of India. So after his passing, my aunt and I went to visit his office, and this is the page that was left open. It was on May 12th. That was the last day he went to work in 2020, but he needed to make sure that he calls his wife or my aunt, and they were supposed to leave work at 5:55 p.m. This empty chair gives me pause and makes me feel really sad. It represents who he was for his whole professional life, surrounded by papers and all the awards that he received, and the office that he loved to go every day, including Saturdays and Sundays. A lot of tributes came from universities and scientific organizations, including International Center for Genetic Engineering and Biotechnology that he was very closely associated with, from UIC, from book publishers such as Springer. He was well liked by his family, friends, and colleagues. Actually, a lot of them thought that he was funny, although the family sometimes disagrees with that view. But in any case, I think he really had a lot of fun with family and friends. He allowed kids or grandkids to play with his hair. He had a lot of fun surrounded by ladies on his 70th and 80th birthday, and he had a lot of fun hanging out and taking his laboratory to dinner. He really enjoyed being with his friends and families, and whenever he would go to Sandhya, he would hang out with his brothers, with his sister-in-laws, and he would celebrate his 70th birthday surrounded by his grandchildren, and he would go to several conferences to just meet up with his friends and colleagues. He really enjoyed his 80th birthday, as you can see from these pictures. He always enjoyed reading newspapers to relax and also to take a nice walk for him to stay in shape and to relax. So just to sum it up, I think the life of Al is a life that brought joy and purpose to his family, friends, and colleagues, and to even people he didn't know. So what I say is, don't cry because it's over, but smile because it happened. We all die. The goal isn't to live forever. The goal is to create something that will last forever. And that is Al, and that's his accomplishments in his lifetime. Thank you very much, and bye. Okay, let's hear from some of Al's colleagues and friends. First, we will hear from Professor Simon Silver. Simon and Al, they know each other for more than 40 years. They went to some different meetings together, and they were colleagues in the same microbiology and immunology department at UIC. After that, we will hear from Arsenio Fialho. He was a postdoctoral fellow in the Chakrabarty laboratory and currently is a professor in Portugal. Then we'll hear from Matthew Parsek. Matthew was a graduate student with Al. After that, we will hear from Vinayak Kapatra. He was a postdoctoral fellow in the Chakrabarty laboratory. And finally, we will hear from Archana Kapatral, who is still in the business office or departmental administrative office at UIC Microbiology and Immunology. And I think you learn a lot of new things about Al and his life.
I'm Simon Silver. who is also a professor in the Department of Microbiology and Immunology at the University of Illinois College of Medicine. And I knew Ananda Chakrabarty, we always called him Al, for 55 years, which is most of our lives, since in 1965, both of us were invited to go to the Gonzalez Group at the University of Illinois in Urbana, Al to start a postdoc, having just finished up his PhD in Calcutta, and me having been interviewed by Gunny in Woods Hole, Massachusetts, and coming for a lecture with the possibility of a faculty appointment to do basically the same work that Al did undertake and was wonderfully successful for over the next 6 years. He introduced plasmid molecular biology to a group that had been the center for the world in Pseudomonas enzymology, but had not had much of a genetic input at that time. So since that time, 1965, I followed Chakrabarty's work, and we were friends during all of that time. We occasionally went to meetings together. Al wrote to me very good annual review of genetics on Pseudomonas plasmid genetics about 10 years later, in which I was happy he covered my work in considerable detail. After 6 years in Urbana, which were good years, Al moved to General Electric, and we all felt that biotechnology was introducing a new merger where companies and universities and government would work together. And in Urbana also, Chakrabarty had a successful time. Most famously, in 1972, they placed a patent application for patenting the recombinant microorganism containing the recombinant plasmids. Then was this long 8-year time in the court hearings when the patent was refused, and eventually in a Supreme Court ruling in 1980, GE and Chakrabarty won. Very soon thereafter, I was by this time at Washington University in St. Louis. Al was brought down to St. Louis by the intellectual property lawyers there to celebrate his victory, and the victory for intellectual property. And I got a call, would I come to this fancy hotel dinner? I had to put on a jacket and tie, 3 miles from home, from my university, so that Al would know at least one person in the audience and not be alone. A few years later, I was recruited to come to Chicago to be head of Al's department at the University of Illinois College of Medicine. And that was a long, evolved process, but the key part of it was in 1986, Chakrabarty rang me in my office at Washington University and made an offer which changed, I think, both of our lives for the next 34 years. He said, quote, "I'm tired of writing letters of recommendation for you to get a job as department chairman," end quote, at other North American universities. And, quote again, "You must be tired of writing similar letters of recommendation for me," end quote. Because after the fame of the Supreme Court ruling, Al got many invitations to take positions at other universities. Back quote, "If you come here, we can both stop writing letters," end quote. And so it was, and since 1986, we had laboratories and offices basically adjacent to one another on the same floor in the same area. We worked together in many ways. We went to international meetings. Chakrabarty was on the advisory committee of an unimaginable large number of meetings, and I with him at maybe a third of those meetings. There were 3 Pseudomonas meetings. The first was in Geneva, Switzerland, just a couple of weeks after I came to Chicago. And at that meeting, Al turned to me and said, "Let's do the next in Chicago." And I said, "Okay, if you do it, I'll help." And so it was. There were a series of Pseudomonas meetings. There were a series of biotechnology meetings. We went to one a couple of weeks after the Geneva meeting, again in Europe. Let me aside. Al said to me, "Let's go back to Chicago for a week, because you can get a lot done in the lab in 4 days." And so we did in 1986, the shortest time I've ever been in North America. Another biotechnology meeting Chakrabarty organized and I helped in Chicago in 2004. Research in laboratory work on Pseudomonas was the center of his life. However, after the Supreme Court ruling, Chakrabarty undertook a major commitment of his time and thinking toward intellectual property, and he traveled around the world to lecture and advise judges and courts on the coming use of molecular genetics and biotechnology in their court hearings. And this, of course, overlapped the time of the O.J. Simpson trial, when Al sent me to a Hispanic judges meeting just up here on Michigan Avenue in a hotel to explain how DNA was coming to their courts as it had come to our laboratories. Chakrabarty and I did not always agree. For example, on the Diamond versus Chakrabarty ruling that the Pseudomonas strain as well as the plasmids should be patentable, we did agree, and that changed the world. No one has challenged it since. It really was one of these key Supreme Court rulings that set the pace forever, I think. But on other rulings, such as the Myriad breast cancer Supreme Court challenge from Myriad Company to patent the genes for breast cancer, we disagreed. Chakrabarty wrote an amicus curiae pamphlet for the Supreme Court supporting that Myriad should have the patent. I was glad when the patent was turned down in favor of more narrow focused patents on technical details and not on the whole science. In the last dozen years or so, as our laboratories slowed down and closed down and we were restricted to what you can do from your office, I would more often come into Al's office than in the past, and we would share a cup of tea for a half an hour. While there, he would be on the email with messages coming in, asking for advice, asking him to go somewhere, on the telephone, and quite frequently people, especially Bengali people, would knock on the door and come in to say hello again, glad to see you again. And this continued right up until this year of the COVID pandemic, when, of course, in the last few weeks of his life, he did not come in. But for 55 years, from 1965 to 2020, I appreciated a wonderful colleague and close personal friend.
My name is 𝐓𝐫𝐢𝐛𝐮𝐭𝐞. I am a professor in the University of Lisbon, Portugal, and I'm giving this testimony in honor of Professor Ananda Chakrabarty. All was my mentor and my beloved friend. So I was a long-term collaboration with Professor Chakrabarty. I've known him a long time ago, 30 years. First, in 1987, I arrived in his lab as a PhD student. And in 2005, during sabbatical leave, I started again to work very close with Ananda Chakrabarty. So I had the privilege to be associated and join his team and started to work with the protein azurin as anti-cancer agent. So since that time and until his retirement, we always work together and you publish many papers and books. So today I continue to learn from Al's mentoring, to his character, enthusiasm, commitment, and passion for science. So this tribute is also a way to grateful for his support always, for his inspiration, and for being always present as a friend.
Hi, my name is Matt Parsek. I recently heard of the sad news of Al Chakrabarty's passing. Al was my former graduate advisor at University of Illinois from 1989 to 1995. Al taught me many things, among which were the value of hard work, and he really set the foundation for my career. It still seems like yesterday. I remember sitting in his office, him with his tea and his sandals, talking about science. I'll miss him, and my heart goes out to the Chakrabarty family.
Dear friends, my name is Vinayak Kapatra. I'm the former postdoc of Al Chakrabarty. I had heard about Al Chakrabarty in 1980s in India when I was an undergrad student, when he gave a talk at the Indian Science Congress. It was a very impressive talk, and I had heard about him in the news and also read in the newspaper. My first meeting with Al was in 1989 when he visited the University of Idaho and gave two wonderful lectures on two different topics of using Pseudomonas as his favorite bug. It was a very impressive talk, and I never imagined that since in 1997 I would get this letter of offer from him as a postdoctoral fellow in his lab. My background in genetics and molecular biology complemented well with his biochemistry focus in studying microorganisms. We studied a lot of different aspects of Pseudomonas in alginate production, on elastase, succinyl-CoA synthetase, etc. Al made sure that I think about science all the 7 days in a week. And how can I ever forget Al having a one-on-one meeting on a Saturday afternoon? That was the best part of working in his lab. Al had a very brilliant career. He was a brilliant scientist and had a very fertile mind and allowed me to explore different aspects of science. I cannot forget the days when Al would enjoy taking us to Moon Palace and introducing me to some of the great Chinese restaurants in and around Chicago. I cherish this letter that Al gave as a certificate along with all the publications I had working in Al's lab. Al, we really miss you. You have really inspired us. You have inspired me. You have worked with my wife, and you have always been very encouraging and kind to my family. Thank you.
I'm Archana Kapatrar, Administrator at the Department of Microbiology and Immunology. The first thing that comes to mind when I think about Dr. Chakrabarty is a smiling face saying good morning. Every day he would walk up the stairs in his Bata chappals to say hello and check on each staff member. He always liked to buy lunch for staff members, and we would make sure to order his favorite dessert, cookies. He loved cookies so much that we called him Cookie Monster. I met him first in 1997 when my husband joined his lab as a postdoc. I would go to lab on weekends with Vinayak to check on experiments and would meet Al sitting in his office writing on the paper in his beautiful handwriting. He introduced us to Moon Palace restaurant in Chicago's Chinatown. He would make sure to order many vegetarian entrees as he knew I'm vegetarian. He was very thoughtful. The world knows him as a great scientist and we know him as a one-finger typist. He was not computer savvy and would use his index fingers to type his emails. If he had to provide reference letters or write papers, he would handwrite them and bring them to the office for typing. He liked to have hard copies of articles or materials received via email, but did not know how to print them on our copier. He would always ask before forwarding materials for printing. No matter how many times we asked him that, he does not need to check with us, but just send us what he needs to be printed. But being a gentleman he was, he would always come upstairs to confirm if it is okay to send. All of us in the office would look forward to seeing him. Once our life goes to normal post-COVID and we go back to office, we are going to miss smiling hellos from Dr. Chakrabarty. We miss you, Dr. Chakrabarty.